114 civilians who had been held in Belarus have been returned to Ukraine. Among those released are Ukrainians who were accused of working for Ukrainian intelligence services. The youngest person released is 25 years old. His wife was returned during the previous release in November. Ukraine was also handed over Belarusian citizens who had been imprisoned for political reasons and were serving long sentences. Among them are well-known Belarusian public and political figures. In particular, Maria Kolesnikova, Viktor Babariko, and journalist Marina Zolotova. The released Belarusian citizens, after receiving the necessary medical assistance and if they wish, will be transported to Poland or Lithuania. This was reported by the coordination headquarters. The head of the main intelligence directorate, Kirilo Budanov, who personally met the released individuals, added that this return was made possible with the assistance of the United States and President Trump. There are already more than 10 wounded, including a 6-year-old child, 2 rescuers, and a police officer. The Russians attacked Zaporizhzhia during the day. They struck with aviation-guided bombs and launched attack drones. Enemy shells destroyed a shopping center and residential buildings. Our correspondent Daria Nazarova will tell you more about the latest shelling.
Around 11 a.m., the occupiers struck a supermarket where there were a lot of people at the time. Smoke, ruins, and shattered goods, everything that's left of the store.
I only heard the impact itself, and that was it. Of course, I got scared, the dogs got scared, they started getting nervous.
A strike drone hit the building like lightning. Even before the attack, the structures were damaged. There's glass debris and food remnants everywhere. The shopping center was turned into ruins in an instant. Several ambulances arrived immediately to take away the wounded. Among them was a child.
We had no electricity and no one was at work. I was going to open the hair salon and saw such an ugly scene. The ATV was smashed, the windows were shattered. Of course, I was very scared. It was very unpleasant.
Overall, the Russians carried out at least 4 strikes on different districts of Zaporizhzhia. On the right bank, cars parked in the yard were burning in place despite the threat of repeated strikes. Emergency services are at work. The extent of the destruction is still being determined.
The Air Force destroyed 110 enemy drones last night. In total, the Russians launched 138 attack UAVs, Shaheds, Gerans, and other types at Ukraine. The drones came from the directions of Oriol, Kursk, Milerovo, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, Shatalovo, and territories of temporarily occupied Crimea. The occupiers attacked our country with an Iskander-M ballistic missile from the Rostov region. Missile strikes and hits from dozens of drones were recorded at 6 locations. This was reported by the Air Force. The Russians targeted a group of civilians in Kostiantynivka, Donetsk region with an FPV drone. 1 person was killed, 2 were wounded, and 2 more were injured in Krasnopodilia. There, a drone called Hardened struck. The drone hunting of people continues in the Kherson region as well. In the morning, the Russians attacked a civilian car in Chornobaivka with a drone. A woman was injured, and in Berislav, a resident was killed in a nighttime drone attack on a house. Another enemy drone dropped explosives on a hospital in Kherson. A nurse and a local resident were wounded. Once again, the occupiers shelled critical infrastructure in the regional center. The centralized water supply system has been damaged and in some places destroyed. There are interruptions in water supply even according to the schedule. Energy workers and utility crews are working to restore electricity and water. A 34-year-old woman and her 14-year-old son were wounded in Semenivka, Chernihiv region. The occupiers hit their house and a gas station, causing a fire to break out. Firefighters worked to put it out. In the Novorod-Siversky district, drones destroyed houses and cars, and in the Kolmi community, Geran drones demolished the local administration building, damaged a church and residential homes. 2 people were rescued during a fire that broke out as a result of shelling in the Dnipropetrovsk region. 3 districts came under fire. The enemy attacked with artillery and drones and also launched a missile strike. The enemy is once again launching massive attacks on Odessa region, targeting industry, transport, ports, and energy facilities. The Russians have been destroying them for several days in a row. Despite this, energy workers managed to partially restore power to critical infrastructure, which had been operating on generators, using backup schemes, and to bring electricity back to 100,000 households. Water has started to return to the apartments of Odessa residents, but not to all of them. so there are still lines forming at the trucks delivering water. Electric transport is not operating in the city, so buses have been put on the roads. Suburban trains are still cancelled. Nearly 800 points of invincibility have been opened in the region. Half of them are in Odessa. The peace plan will not please everyone. Volodymyr Zelensky made statements regarding the possible end of the war and elections in Ukraine. The latest proposals regarding the peace plan have already been sent to the US, but Ukraine has not yet received a response. The president said this to journalists on his way to Berlin, where the plan is set to be discussed. It consists of 20 points, including in particular a ceasefire. According to Zelensky, the Americans are proposing that the armed forces of Ukraine withdraw from Donbas, and at the same time that Russian troops do not enter there, Russian troops. But if the US wants to end this war, it is Russia that must make a compromise, Zelensky stated. According to him, Ukraine has already made a compromise regarding security guarantees. Instead of NATO membership, there could be bilateral security guarantees. The president also commented on the possible elections. He stated that he is not clinging to his position and that in the near future, members of parliament should develop options for holding the vote. Ukraine must be ready for any turn of events, Zelensky concluded. I'm curious, do you believe that elections can actually be held in Ukraine under martial law? And if so, in what way? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. And don't forget to support us with a like. I'll continue. This is TSN. The Russians have advanced near Rivne, Vyimki and Vashukivka in the Donetsk region. This was reported by analysts from the Deep State project. The situation is also difficult in Mirnohrad. There, our soldiers are looking for ways to unblock the routes from the west into the city. Fighting between the Ukrainian armed forces and the occupying army is taking place right among private houses and high-rise buildings in the city center. Despite the difficult situation, our defenders are holding the defense of this city, which is extremely important to prevent the enemy from capturing Pokrovsk. Overall, on the Pokrovsk front, the defense forces repelled 44 enemy assaults, which is almost a third of all those that took place on the front over the past day, according to the General Staff. Ukrainian soldiers are also holding the defense in Kupiansk. There, the enemy continues attempts to break through from the outskirts, forcing the Oskil River. However, drone pilots are closely monitoring everything from the sky, searching for and destroying the occupiers. The Russians are deploying reserves toward Pokrovsk. It is known that the Russians are pulling the 76th Airborne Division into the battle for the city. A group of occupiers on ATVs moved in from the south to attack our forces in Pokrovsk again. TSN special correspondent Yulia Kirienko witnessed how they were destroyed. Her report is especially interesting because our troops were firing the most powerful weapon on the front line. Watch this exclusive from the Pokrovsk direction right now.
This is the most powerful weapon on the front in action.
We destroy infantry, lightly armored vehicles, and buildings.
The American multiple launch rocket system MLRS. Inside the cabin, the rocket operators input the target coordinates into the computer. This is a multi-launch, the commanders say.
The guys are reloading the tubes, so it will be a multi-launch. There will be 2 rockets fired at 2 different targets. Just a few more.
Minutes to prepare the rocket. And once again, it tears through the sky. The MLRS system is now preparing to operate in the Pokrovsk direction, specifically targeting the city itself, since a location of Russian pilots was detected there. That's quite a good target. If it's destroyed, and I believe that with the kind of rockets this system uses, the Russians have no chance to survive or hold out. So basically, in this way, our rocket forces will cover our infantry, who are suffering greatly from Russian drones in Pokrovsk. The powerful launch of a rocket from the MLRS even throws up Ukrainian black soil all around the vehicle. You can hear it flying for kilometers. And inside the cabin, things happen that can't be shown to the public. The soldiers enter new coordinates each time to hit the enemy precisely. In Pokrovsk, the Russians are advancing again. And just now, these rocket launches changed the course of the battle. Here, Russian assault troops are moving past a graveyard of equipment destroyed by our own soldiers. Even though artillery is hitting them, the occupiers keep moving forward. And in an instant, the Russian assault group of 10 soldiers and several ATVs is gone.
Of course, every shot, I'm satisfied, very satisfied. I'm always pleased with this work, and
This was the workplace of Russian drones. Now, it's unlikely that anything will take off from here.
there will be wounded. They'll be a bit stunned when something that heavy hits. A lady with a .227 caliber, I think the enemy really feels it.
To avoid revealing the firing coordinates, the launcher is quickly packed up. After the job is done, it heads to a hiding place. These have been the rules of engagement since 2022, the rocket troops say, ever since MLRS appeared in Ukraine.
At first the enemy was a bit confused. Ours didn't understand how to fight against this equipment. And our hits were, you could say, 100 out of 100. There were no misses, nothing at all. In other words, you'd give the coordinates and the strike would land exactly on target, meter by meter.
Later, the Russians learned to shoot down MLRS rockets with their Panzer air defense systems. Eventually, they started targeting the vehicles with ballistic missiles. But Ukrainian forces also learned how to avoid Russian traps. They say as long as there are enough rockets.
We only operate as needed, by request, on targets that appear and on urgent targets. When artillery or our UAV units can't engage enemy assault groups, that's when we get involved.
The Russians have started deploying their reserves to Pokrovsk. They are gradually bringing in the 76th Airborne Division. After all, in recent weeks, our troops have managed to wipe out several battalions of mechanized units there. However, the situation remains difficult. That's why the MLRS vehicle is heading for reloading. There is still plenty of work ahead for its crew. Reporting from the Pokrovsk direction, Yulia Kirienko, Alexander Shian, Ole Mostovi, TSN 1+1.
A terrorist attack. In Sydney, there was a shooting at the popular Bondi Beach. At least 12 people are known to have been killed and 60 wounded. People had gathered there to celebrate Hanukkah. According to eyewitnesses, 2 armed men opened fire from a small bridge nearby. There were too many people on the beach. Frightened and panicked, people scattered in all directions. In addition, cameras captured a random passerby who managed to disarm one of the shooters. The man attacked from behind and took away the rifle. It is known that one of the terrorists was eliminated and the other was detained by the police. The Prime Minister of Australia responded to the incident, calling the shooting shocking and alarming. He added that all relevant services are currently working and will provide additional information about the tragedy. The terrorist attack in Sydney was also condemned by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He expressed his condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims. Epic footage of the crash of the Russian An-22 aircraft has appeared online. The military transport aircraft crashed back on Tuesday, but only now can we see just how spectacular it was. Initially, it was reported that the plane went down in an uninhabited area of Russia's Ivanovo region, but in this footage we can see that it barely missed residential buildings. Moreover, it started to break apart while still in the air and then crashed into the Vodskoy reservoir. There were 7 people on board and their fate is unknown. By the way, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the Antonov 22 had just undergone a major overhaul and was on a test flight. Investigators in Russia are currently clarifying the circumstances of the crash. Preliminary reports suggest the incident occurred due to a technical malfunction, as the aircraft had been in operation for over 50 years. The An-22 is the largest turboprop aircraft in the world. It is designed for transporting heavy and oversized weaponry, military equipment, personnel, and for airdropping troops. In total, Russia had 4 such aircraft, 2 of which were in storage. Meanwhile, a court in Borodyanka, Kyiv region, acquitted a Russian serviceman. He was accused of robbing a private home during the occupation of the Kyiv region in March. 22nd, and this is the first time a Ukrainian court has acquitted an occupier. Did the judge have any other choice, and are the victims still willing to seek justice even long after the crime? Justice? TSN correspondent Dmitry Fodak investigated.
They killed my wife, that's one. My beloved wife was tragically killed. I was stripped away of all my good health and hard-earned money.
The life of Kharkiv resident Ole Zablotsky. In an instant, everything changed forever when a Russian drone crashed into his private home this spring. His wife Tamara died on the spot. All that was left of the house were ruins.
Someone must be held accountable for this. Isn't this guilt? Guilt!
TSN meets with Mr. Olesh in Kharkiv at the Coordination Center for Assistance to Victims and Witnesses, and we deliberately speak with him far from the place where his home once stood, so as not to cause him additional trauma. He has been recognized as a victim in this war crime, the murder of a civilian. To date, more than 194,000 such crimes have been registered, and they only take on those cases for investigation where there is a higher chance of gathering enough evidence to prove guilt in court. Most proceedings are held in absentia, without the physical presence of the accused. But the Prosecutor General's office insists that they are acting in accordance with all norms of Ukrainian and international law. In particular, they do everything possible to ensure that the accused, even those on the territory of the aggressor state, are made aware of the charges against them. They even write to them on social media.
Some of the messages were read. In some cases, their assistants reached out to us and said they would definitely pass the information along. As for those who were notified of suspicion, let's just say, they told us where we could stick that suspicion. But as lawyers, we understood this to mean that the person had become familiar with its contents.
Recently, the Borodyanka district court in the Kyiv region acquitted a Russian soldier accused of war crimes for the first time in Ukraine. The Russian National Guard serviceman was accused of robbing a private home in the Bucha district in March 2022. After that, he allegedly sent a package to his home from a post office in Belarus. The verdict of the Borodyanka court caused some outrage.
Such a strong reaction was triggered by the question of how an occupier could be acquitted.
The judge who acquitted the Russian soldier is Hennady Stasenko. People in robes very rarely comment publicly on their verdicts. However, given the publicity of this case, His Honor agrees to answer TSN's questions.
This is also a first for me. I am only trying to clarify, not to justify the decision, but rather to fully explain the specific details of this particular category of war crimes cases.
Hennady Stasenko emphasizes that during the proceedings, the court did not question it. A civilian home was indeed looted, and a specific unit of the Russian National Guard was involved in this. But apparently that's not enough for a guilty verdict. Irrefutable evidence is required.
The fact that this particular person entered this house, or was even at the very least quite near this particular house, or at least in the immediate vicinity, or at least directly on this very street. Has not been established and has not been provided to the court.
His Honor notes that previously the Berdyansk court had issued guilty verdicts against 4 Russian war criminals. In total, there have been 211 such verdicts across Ukraine. Therefore, the precedent of acquitting a Russian, they say, should not become the norm. This view is shared by human rights activist Anna Rozomakina.
Don't get emotional. It's important to understand that this verdict in no way challenges the scale of crimes committed by the Russians. I'm not justifying them. Here, it's about the quality of the investigation and the fact that a judge should issue a guilty verdict only if guilt is fully proven.
The daily war crimes committed by the Russians place an enormous burden on investigators and prosecutors. But Ukraine has no right not to document and investigate these crimes. The Prosecutor General's office is convinced.
We don't want a single crime to go on responsibility for it. We don't want other countries to become a safe haven for Russian war criminals. That is why we understand that it is a great responsibility for prosecutors and investigators to document what has happened.
Kharkiv resident Ole Zablotsky is also ready to help establish justice. He lost his home, his wife, and despite his advanced age, he is ready to attend court, testify, and seek justice. Punishment for the murderers.
From the propagandists to the Russian military command, and even the ordinary soldiers who came here to shoot. All progressive humanity must understand that true justice does exist.
Lawyers remind us that war crimes have no statute of limitations.
Justice knows how to wait.
Dmytro Furdak, Yulia Boyko, Alexander Shayan, and Mikhailo Putyata, TSN 1+1.
The King of Britain has shared details about his cancer treatment. Charles III says that his therapy is expected to be reduced as early as next year. The treatment is effective thanks to early diagnosis and intervention. The monarch made this statement as part of the charity project Together Against Cancer and urged others not to postpone their checkups. Charles III cited statistics. 9 million people do not undergo the cancer screenings available to them on time, and this significantly worsens their chances of recovery. Let me remind you, cancer was diagnosed in the 77-year-old king in February of last year. For a while, he was forced to suspend his participation in public events.